Welcome back. As you've probably seen and heard about epicseven's new update, one of the big selling points of the patch or the version is Milestone of Radiance, which is a pretty big and, well, to be honest, pretty generous activity with a bit of an asterisk, which we'll go over in a moment. Something that I do want to point out, though, is that of course, I don't have a new account, so I can't exactly show you the rewards that you get from Milestone of Radiance. However, in terms of the overall rewards that we've seen, this is easily one of the craziest new or more, I guess, generous rewards that you can get from the game. Now, of course, this is effectively similar to that of like an adventurer's path. The main difference here, I would say, though, is that the rewards that you get are kind of associated not to completing quests as it is opposed to just doing or completing activities in general. Now, I would also like to point out that this, and as they've described, is a bit of an RNG fest. There are lots of different ways, of course, that you can get these rewards. And though there are maybe more for the returners specifically, the reality here is that you could be super lucky, you could be very unlucky. It really kind of depends, and at least from what I've seen right now, it is a net positive, though there are some obvious discomfort or annoyances to the system as a whole that I think people are pretty right in complaining about. Now, with all this all out of the way, I do want to point out that this is absolutely one of the craziest events if you are a new player, and one of the best incentives for you to actually start playing. But in terms of what you can expect for the rewards, yes, as you've probably seen from the title of this video, this is a sort of activity that gives you 10 Moonlight 5 stars. Now, that for a lot of players is already good enough reason for people to pull for or to start playing this activity, but there are other rewards that you can have access to. Now, even if you aren't a new player who is probably only using the ML5s as the main giveaway or as the main like takeaway for why you would want to get these rewards, there are other rewards for veterans in here, including a 20 speed ring, speed set, it's got 16 defense, and it's HP main. Pretty good in most cases, especially if you're going to use this with some of the more high HP characters in the game at the moment. And of course, it's 20 speed. What are we even talking about here? That said, I do think the obvious selling point for a lot of veteran players, though, is also going to be this Moonlight 5-star hero selector. But even before we get to that, and something that I've kind of highlighted before, there are things like the faint mana crystals here, which are extremely powerful. You can purchase this from the shop. Whether or not that's something that you want right now, especially if you're doing PvE, is completely up for debate. But you do have access to 25 of these faint mana crystals, which means at basically, or the moment that you have access to it or you buy these, you can immediately fill out the entirety of this board, which is pretty crazy. Though again, whether or not you'll actually need it is a completely different conversation. Now, I do also want to point out regarding the Milestone of Radiance, despite what you may have heard, or despite what your impression of the way that the system works is, the reality is that the system works as follows. You have a basically a never-ending ladder. Well, not really a never-ending, but you have a series of chests that you open, and this is effectively kind of similar to walking down like a board game. Like you go on tiles or you go on spaces, and every time that you open up or you land on one of these tiles, you get the associated thing. In this case, it's something like a chest, and here are the contents of the chest that you can gain access to. Now, some of these are crazy, some of these are great, including things like the Molagoras, or even if you get some of the powder, which is also fantastic. But you do have on especially these chests, and I think all of these chests actually, or I believe it's a lot of them, there is a chance for these chests to upgrade or to transform, which they haven't mentioned here, but is pretty impactful because, again, if you are able to transform some of these chests up to the gold or up to the diamond chests, you get incredibly good rewards. This one, for instance, specifically will give you one of the Moonlight 5-star heroes up to Successor Teiyu, and here's where basically the entirety of the Milestone of Radiance needs to be reevaluated a little bit. And now, if you've watched this video, you're probably going to comment something about how you don't enjoy the Milestone of Radiance rewards, primarily because one of the main selling points was that, hey, you get so many free pulls, you get so many free characters, all these ML5s, and I agree with you. That sounds great at first, but then, as I also agree with you, the fact that you do not get any of the dupes, You do basically, or rather I should say, you don't get any of the dupe characters, and the fact that the dupe itself doesn't even give you the coins that you'd get from getting a dupe, and instead it converts to either like 100 to, I think it's 200 or 500 of this glory coin, is kind of messed up. Now, again, I do also want to point out that the reality is that if you're a new player, what I'm talking about doesn't even necessarily concern you, because you're likely getting a lot of characters for the first time, which is great. And again, getting all these characters for the first time, especially as a new player, is like, it's just that. It's amazing. It's fantastic. And you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you're a veteran player, you were told to basically not worry, and that the value of these chests would still be very high, because the reality is that, guess what, guys, you know, you'll still have access to some of these rewards too. And, you know, you'll be able to buy things, or you'll have like the selector in this shop. But even with all the options or the selection that they put in here, this is really not the same, or not the equivalent to giving people, again, these dupes, or the equivalent to giving someone 10 ML5s. Now, for the record, I don't necessarily think that the new player reward needs to be the same, or should even be the same as the veteran players, because this is supposed to be more of a catch-up for new players. But I think kind of having the veteran, or kind of having the imprint circuit alongside the Milestone and Radiance happening at the exact same time, kind of makes that middle ground player, like players that haven't necessarily, you know, spent $50 billion on the game, but aren't also new, feel completely terrible. Now, the reason I say that, again, is because not only are you basically not able to keep up with the players, or the people that are, you know, speeding through the soul rank like 24/7. They have like people, or they have like their game running 24/7, and they're like, you know, spending skystones at an alarming rate to get through like the soul ranks. Not only are you getting outcompeted by those people in there, you're also getting outcompeted by them on this. And even if, like, let's say you were, oh, like the last thing I needed was like an imprint, or, you know, I wanted to build like a second Zeo because like there's a strategy that I think will work for me. You don't have access to any of that from the Milestone of Radiance or from the imprint circuit. And though I don't necessarily feel that Smilegate have completely like thrown their like head off like the roof in terms of like how they handled the imprint circuit, like they nerfed it almost like immediately. And again, they are still observing, or they're still, you know, able to make changes to both this and the Milestone and Radiance, you know, hoping for that. But despite all this, it just feels incredibly bad if you're one of the loyal players to epicseven right now, and you are basically the guy who's trying to convince the rest of their friends to play the game right now, because there isn't a whole lot in the game for you at the moment, at least in terms of this event specifically. Now, you do get a lot of other rewards, and I think you would be like absolutely lying if you didn't say that you probably got a lot of Mulagora, or you got a lot of Power of Knowledge, or you weren't able to, again, buy something like the Broken Silence Ring or some of these other pieces of gear. However, and again, I don't think I'm, you know, the only one in saying or committing to this, but you don't even, in my opinion, necessarily get these glory coins at the rate or the frequency that it feels like people may be insinuating. Now, I also have seen from new players that they aren't just getting all the 10 ML5s like immediately, like at the snap of their finger. However, for the new players, the second that you get like a new ML5 character, that's insane dopamine. You know, you've never had access to Boss and Runka, and now you've got one of the most powerful characters in the game. You know, you've never been able to survive or do well in Guild War, but now you've got someone like Nodos, or rather, well, not Nodos, but like, you know what I mean? You got whatever the list is for, I think they're only able to get up to Successor Teiyu, whatever the case is. You get one of these incredibly powerful ML5 characters, and you start building them, and now your Guild War defense isn't entirely terrible, or your initial arena defense isn't terrible. That is a crazy amount of dopamine, and there really is, I just have to admit, like, not really anything quite the same level for that if you're someone that isn't a returner, or if you aren't someone that's new. Now, again, the Faint Mana Crystal should be, in my opinion, one of the selling points of this, and so is the Astrium and the Cosmonium, but the issue with that is, number one, the Faint Mana Crystal, that system was not tweaked or fixed until recently, and people are still, I'm sure, a bit sore about the system as a whole. But the reality is that even if you were a bit hyped about the Astrium, Cosmonium, you only get one of these. So if you were someone that was trying to make the perfect piece, I can even show you the piece that I made. This piece is great. I mean, 108 is fantastic. Obviously, it's going to be a bit lower because I'm going to get rid of this this defense percent here. But you can only do that once, and this is not cheap either. If I'm not mistaken, this is, I think the combined cost for this is like 400. But then, you know, though 400 may feel kind of good at first, it's 5 times that, or like 6 times that amount to get the ring, 6 times that amount to get the necklace. And then otherwise, you know, I guess maybe people could be a bit excited about these limited hero selectors, but that's like kind of the whole shop. And otherwise, as far as I understand, this activity or this event is not really about you getting new characters or anything. It's about you getting Molagoras and coins and I guess charms, leaves maybe. But again, just for me, I understand the idea that this is not supposed to only be, or you're not supposed to have necessarily the same level of happiness from these chests that someone like a new player would get. But not only does the chest cost go up, and again, for context, I've definitely spent like over 300 leaves already during this event just farming, and I am at 50, you know, and 50 is arguably, you know, it's what, like 5 diamond chests. Not a single one of these was, again, either one that I haven't owned already or something usable or like contributed significantly to my like my quote unquote wallet here. Again, if there was at least something more interesting, or maybe if there was something, or like more gear here, or if there was something a bit more repeatable that you could purchase here, then I would understand or be more fine to it. And I do acknowledge that they're also planning on changing this in the future, but the system is about as straightforward as it looks. There is not a whole lot going for it if you are a new or an existing player. But I will say, again, for fairness for epicseven, if you are a new player, this is probably one of the craziest events you've ever seen. And just in case if you aren't sure about it, you are able to get this currency through basically doing anything, which again, I do think is kind of a plus. And there is also an increase essence of Radiance gain for the moment, which is pretty impactful too. But I would also like to give a bit of applause to epicseven for allowing us to also gain this currency from playing RTA, which I have definitely been taking advantage of. But otherwise, guys, I think for right now, the Milestone of Radiance itself is a very interesting concept. I think it could very well be, one of the best systems that epicseven has changed, or rather implemented. But they will, in my opinion, at least need to, at the very minimum, the next update to the Milestone of Radiance should definitely have something a bit more suitable, I would say, especially if they're not trying to like do this whole new era and try to get new players. Maybe like the existing or the players that are still playing, the veteran players, have something a bit more nice, because again, even for the pieces that we've seen here, yes, I understand. Well, this one I don't understand, I should say, but like for the most part, though, I would acknowledge that some of these pieces are a bit interesting. Like, yeah, wow, like a high attack piece on a sword, okay, kind of cooking. A prot set piece with high HP, okay, kind of cooking. But then even like if you look at the other stats here, I mean, you know, if this is like a 12 speed and like 12 ER, or like a 15 ER helmet, this is not good. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not going to get the same enjoyment from, or this, like all of the newness of this event. Like once it wears off, I am not going to be very excited for some of these pieces or for some of these rewards outside of like obviously this 20 ring here. But even this 40 attack one is not, you know, this is a crit damage neck on destruction set. Like a lot of players, I think, are probably also like aware that having Destro set and crit damage main as like the two pieces here almost is like counterintuitive, depending on what your build is or depending on how you just like how your gear has rolled. In any case, though, enough ranting. I just wanted to point this out. I do also want to point out here that this selector here is only up to Teiyu. If this is something where you're missing a character and you want that, that's fine. This also costs 1,500 though, and it is not very cheap to get these glory coins. Anyways, that was my introduction to Glory, the Milestone of Radiance. I apologize if it's a bit, if I was a bit critiquey about it. I do think that's kind of the general feel of the event as a whole, though. I know a lot of players are probably enjoying it, and I'm happy for every player who is. But I think there are definitely a lot of veteran players who are looking at this and we're kind of excited to come back to or play more epicseven because of this. And as far as I understand right now, the only thing that you are probably extremely happy about is that playing RTA will give you this currency here if you play long enough. But then that goes into the imprint circuit thing, which again, I still think they need to address because that's a bit of a big boo-boo. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.